Hello and welcome to this Mendix in 30 webinar. In today's webinar, we're going to focus on the topic of collaborative visual development, and I'm joined here with my colleague today, Craig White. In the next 30 minutes, we'll take you through an example of a project built in the Mendix platform and show you the collaboration features that make up the technology. So the structure of these webinars is that we will have a monthly series. Each month we will focus on a particular topic. Today we'll focus on collaborative visual development. In June we'll focus on building beautiful multi-channel apps. In July we'll focus on building mobile experiences for both online and offline mobile applications. The structure of these webinars is that we'll have a 5-minute presentation followed by a 25-minute demo and finally a 10-minute live Q&A. So Mendix was born to really help enterprises win with applications. What this means is we combine both business and IT together to allow them to develop applications and collaborate at speed, allowing them to develop applications 10 times faster than traditional development and using 70% less resources. So the main feature that we're trying to address with the Mendix platform is that we're trying to help with that 30 to 35% of all IT projects fail. And there's 3 main reasons why these fail. The first one is lack of end user involvement, making sure that all of the users in the application lifecycle are involved during the process of developing applications. The second is that we often have unclear business requirements. So sometimes it's very difficult for those business users to be able to collaborate and be able to share the requirements that they need for developing an application. And the third one is that often dev processes do not allow for change. They often use waterfall methodology to develop applications, which doesn't encourage collaboration with both the business and IT. So Mendix believes that there are 3 key areas that help with successful collaboration. The first one is communication, so ensuring both business and IT have a central place where they can share business goals and make sure that that business knowledge is shared and leveraged to develop applications. The second one is enabling collaboration, so being able to create components that accelerate the time to value and making these available and easy to use for all types of developers within an organization. And the third one is synergy. So making sure that you have one application and one tool which allows you to share the same sort of experiences and the same language so that you can communicate with both the business IT in the same language and same process. Mendix is the only low-code platform that addresses all 3 areas. We do that in a unique way using the Mendix technology where we incorporate all personas involved in the application lifecycle. So in essence, the Mendix collaboration tries to involve all those different types of developers within your organization. We do that by combining business needs and ideas in a central portal where we can capture those initial requirements and we can iterate upon those with both the business and IT. All the business requirements need to be gathered into one central platform so that whilst you're developing your application, there's no confusion as to what needs to be developed. We also need to be able to capture feedback from our end users, our developers and testers so that we can iterate upon our application. Every time we develop an application, we need to be able to launch that application, be able to release new features very, very quickly. So during this application lifecycle, there are often different people within the organization that need to be involved. We need to incorporate the UI and UX specialists into our application lifecycle so that they can ensure that their brand is met by all of the applications we develop. They can also make sure that it delivers the experience that they want to promote as an organization. So in the Mendix platform, we have certain key features that help incorporate the UI specialists. We also have certain tools that help and support our integration specialists. So making it very easy for them to consume those APIs and those business functions that are important to make sure that we meet the business goals. They can develop these particular applications and make them available to the rest of the development team. We also need to be able to make sure that the business stakeholders can use any of the tools that are developed by our UX and our integration specialist and make sure they have a clear understanding of the progress when developing our applications. They are product owners for this particular application, so they need to make sure that everything they develop is meeting and delivering on their business goals. And finally, we need to incorporate the operation users. So being able to make sure that once we go live with those applications, that we are keeping those applications healthy and that we are maintaining those applications over time. We can see each of our applications and our application landscape, and we can make sure that the applications that the business users, the integration specialists, and the UI specialists are delivering are meeting upon the security and governance that are required for this organization. So now that I've given you an overview of the Mendix product, I want to give you a demonstration of how those features are working using the Mendix technology. So I'm going to open up an application here, and this application is a mobile application called the Customer Portal. It's available on the Mendix mobile application under our Showcase section, which I'll show you in a second. And it allows you to view a number of applications, but also collaborate with people within your business. So here we have a buzzwall where we can share ideas with people within our company, and we can start to gather and add user stories. So we're going to open up the Customer Portal application here now, and we can see that the application allows us to view a list of accounts, whether it be our credit card, our business account, and we can drill down on each of those to see some transaction information. Using native device functionalities like swipe, transitions, and gestures, we can view the information that's available in our Mendix application. We can add split cost information, for instance. We might want to split our transaction up between a number of our friends. And we can also use swipe and gesture functionalities to move between those different pages. The way we build these applications is we don't code these applications. We model these applications for both mobile, tablet, and web. And we can see our web application here. This is running responsively across both our web and mobile and tablet, and we can drill down and view the same information that we had on our mobile application. As we're going through this application, we might decide that we want to make a change to this application. We might be as a developer or a end user, and we want to be able to submit some feedback to our developers so that they can develop a new feature and add it into our product. So on every Mendix application, we have a feedback button in the right-hand corner here. So the feedback that we want to enter for this particular page is we might want to add some information, and when we take a photo of a particular receipt, we want to be able to capture that information from the receipt. So read the details from our image and be able to add that in as a note into our application. So here, when we press this feedback button, we have the option to add in a name and also an email address so that we can be contacted later. So we can have two-way dialogue over email and over in the portal. So we can add in a description here, and the description for our particular user story is that we want to add some features so that we can scan that particular photo that we add, and we can add those in as notes to our transaction. So here we add a description and some more information. We can also include a snapshot of the screen that we were on at the time so that we can then give some more contextual information for our end users. So if we submit the feedback now here, it will submit this back into our central portal. We'll get a feedback item number so that we can track that throughout our process. And all of that feedback goes into our central project management tool. This is what we call Mendix Home and allows you to share ideas and manage projects when developing applications in the Mendix product. So if we open up the Mendix portal here, we can see we're in a project space. We're in our space called My Customer Portal, and here we can see a list of transactions, a list of interactions with people within our project. We can see here Craig's asked a number of questions. We have a poll. We have a number of images and documents which are uploaded into the portal. So it's one central place where we can have that collaboration and we can have that visibility for all of our users. We can invite a number of different team members to our project using the invite user option. So if I wanted to invite my colleague Chris Hodges, I can type his email in here and I can then decide what user role he is in our project. So Mendix uses an Agile methodology, specifically Scrum, and the roles and responsibilities are set up to help you manage your project in an Agile methodology. You can fully customize each of these roles within your project so that you can design the security framework that you want when running these applications. So obviously developing in Mendix really speeds up your application development by using model-driven development, but you also have to be able to speed up your whole Agile methodology and your whole collaboration. So within every Mendix project, we have a full application lifecycle. So everything from gathering requirements, developing your application, deploying, and finally operating. With every project, you have a security framework where you can set up the roles and responsibilities for your project. You can add new user roles here, and these can then define what a user has access to when developing out a project. They might have user access, for instance, to the stories and feedback, but they might not have access to the requirements and development. So all of the requirements and all of the feedback that I've submitted goes into this open feedback section. As a product owner, I can drill down and I can view some more information, like our screenshot that we submitted earlier, and some more information about what browser the user was on, what screen page, and also what user role they were logged in as at the time. So some really important information to help us diagnose what the problem is with this feedback. We can then decide to accept this particular feedback item, mark it under review, or handle it as an item. We can add some motivation to this particular feedback item, and this will be emailed to the user when we submit this as a story. We're going to mark this for a particular sprint and accept that particular feedback item. What this does is it turns this particular feedback item into a user story so that we can start working on it, we can start developing and collaborating around that functionality. So if we go to the story section here now, we can see all of those user stories that we've created in our project. We can add story points to those, add comments and so on, and mark them as to do, running, and done. So these statuses give us a really good overview of how we're progressing during our development of our sprint. So Mendix works in sprints, and usually we do a 5-day or 10-day sprint, and we create a number of user requirements to burn down during that particular 10-day sprint. We've kept the functionality within the Mendix platform very simple so that both business users who have never developed in Agile before can easily use the platform, and they can drag and drop these user stories around, making it very easy for them to prioritize and add certain comments to each of these user stories. You can add documents, you can add pictures to these user stories, so you can have that central portal where all of the information about your project is stored, and there's no confusion when developing out this application. So as you can see at the bottom here, we have our user story that was created from our feedback earlier, and we can see the feedback number that's also been pulled through from our feedback information. So when we complete this particular story, the user that will submit the feedback will get notification that we've actually completed that user story, and we'll get an email. Using the planning section, we can plan out a number of to-do, running, and done user stories, and we can get this Kanban view style of all of our user stories and how we're progressing during the sprint. We can also view a burn down chart of how well we're progressing against the ideal burn down chart. So we can see how many user stories we've burnt down today compared to tomorrow and so on. So now I've given you an overview of the collaboration features that make out the project management side of the Mendix portal. I want to take you into the web modeler. So the web modeler is our frictionless development environment, allow you to build out your application using models in a web version of our development tool. And we also have a desktop version of the development tool as well, which allows more traditional developers or business developers to develop out more sophisticated functionality. So I'm going to open up the web modeler here, and I'm going to start to show you some of the features that make out our collaboration development environment and how we can build out using visual models our application. So this is the web modeler interface, and on the right hand side here we have a number of building blocks that we can drag and drop onto our interface, and we can drag and build our application out for both mobile, tablet and web. So out of the box we have responsive design. So if we drag on a building block from the right hand side here, we can edit and customize those features so that we can build out our interface. All of those can be completely customized for our own organization needs, and we can then add in the user experience and user interface from our corporate brand. We also have a number of low-level widgets, such as being able to view a list, being able to radio buttons, drop-downs, and so on. So there are three core Mendix components that make up any Mendix model. The first one is the pages, which I've just shown you here. The second one is our domain model, which is where we build out our data structure. So any data that we're going to store in a database of our choice, or any data that we're going to store in memory. The third concept that we have is what we call microflows. And microflows is where we build out business logic, either in a button click, a background process, or as a web service. And it's based on a number of activities and a number of decisions. So they're the three core components that make up the Mendix model, and this is how we build out our applications for both mobile, tablet, and web. So if we go back to our page that we had open earlier, where we were uploading a photo, we can start to implement the functionality that we want. As we do so, we can collaborate with different people within our organization to help us develop out this particular feature. So in this version of this application, we do not have any text fields to store our particular data. So we can drag on a text area from our toolbox, and we can start to configure that up to our data. Now we might want to create a new attribute for this particular data, and we can do that by clicking New Attribute. We don't have to write any SQL statements. We don't have to control it via the domain model. We can simply create these from the page and use a design thinking approach to building out applications. So we're going to call this attribute matched text, and we're going to make this of a string attribute. When we create that, it will connect up our particular text field to our data field in our domain model now. So the next thing we want to do is we want to configure this button to be able to call some logic so that we can scan the photo, and we can then save the text that's responded back into our new attribute we've created. So when developing this particular feature, I might not necessarily know how to do everything for this particular logic, but I do know how to create a microflow, for instance. So I can create a new microflow and I can give it a caption of scan. And I'm also going to create a new microflow to actually be called when I click this button. So I'm going to add a text and I'm going to call it scan photo, click create, and this will create me a template for our new microflow. We have a parameter for the transaction photo, and we might want to ask someone from our team to give us some assistance. Now Craig within my team, he's very good developer. He might be able to assist us in developing out this microflow. So in every microflow and page, we have this buzz option here. And this allows us to start to collaborate with people within our project. I can go into this particular text field and do an @ symbol to start notifying one of my developers or one of my team members that I require some assistance when developing out this particular flow. So I'm going to add @Craig White, and I'm going to ask him for some assistance. I want to ask him, how can I add some scanning features to this particular flow? When I click post, he will be notified via email that I've acquired some assistance for this particular logic. So let's just wait for Craig to respond back to us. We'll see this update in the web modeler, and we can then have a two-way dialogue during this process. So you can see here we've got this comment now, but also what you can see on the top right here now, at the top, so you can see that Craig has started to edit this in the web modeler. So he's actually editing this, and we've locked out our view so that it's now only in read-only view. As you can see, when we select options, we cannot drag on new options to our microflow, and we cannot edit new features until Craig is done with this flow. So once he's completed those changes, we can then take over the development again from him to see his new options. So we can see this two-way collaboration within the modeler. So here we go. So we can see those changes that Craig has made in the browser now. We can see that he's added an annotation saying use the Google Vision connector, and also added a change object functionality here. So we can pull those changes from Craig, and we have a live collaboration and development using the web modeler here. So during the development cycle, we can have that collaboration not only on the user stories, but also when we're developing our application out. So making it very easy to collaborate around your logic of your application, your data, and also your pages when developing out both in the web and the desktop version of our development tool. So to develop out the rest of these features, I need to work in the desktop environment. I want to be able to connect into this connector that's available on our App Store, and I want to be able to make that logic and that data available for our business users using the modeling tool. So if we take over the development now and we switch into our desktop version of our modeling environment, we can start to build out that functionality. So I'm going to go back into the portal now, and I'm going to hit Edit in Desktop Modeler. This will open up the desktop environment for us where we can build out our application using our offline desktop environment. So we don't have to have a connectivity. We can build out our application using the desktop environment, and we can commit that back into our central repository. So we're working on exactly the same model on both the web modeler and desktop modeler. There's no difference between the two. And the same concepts apply. We build applications using models rather than actual code. So in the development tool, we have the ability to view all of those user stories that we have available in our project. We can tie back certain functionality that we're working on to those user stories, and we can have collaboration, and we can comment on these user stories directly in the modeling environment. So here you can see we can see the feedback item, and we can start to set that status as running as we start to develop out this functionality. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get that new functionality that the users in our web modeler has developed, and we need to pull that through into our application. So all of the users that use the web modeler are working in a branch line so that they can make sure that all of the changes that they are working on are not impacting that mainline functionality. So as a more business developer here, I can decide to pull down those changes from our web modeler interface, and we can sync those changes into our desktop version to make those available and decide what we're going to have available in our web modeler. So all those changes that we have made in the web modeler, such as adding that new attribute, pulling those changes, those logic changes that Craig also made, will be available now in our desktop environment. So here the changes are being merged into our application, and finally we can see those changes in our application now. We can decide which changes we want to accept and which ones we want to reject, and we can also extend those particular changes. So here we see the scan photo microflow that we created earlier, and we can see that change and that comment that Craig made in our web modeler interface. So now we want to add that new functionality. We want to be able to call out to our OCR service from Google Vision, and we want to change our attributes so that we can see that information displayed on a page. So the first thing we're going to do is going to open up our App Store. And our App Store is our component library, which allows us to build from a number of components rather than building from scratch. And this really accelerates the development of every project. The App Store comes in two versions. It comes in a public version, which is available to everyone within the Mendix community, and also a private App Store. So every company gets their own private App Store, allowing them to share connectors, widgets, or extensions on their private App Store, allowing them to only have those available for people within their organization. So this can often save a lot of time in developing your applications because you're not building from scratch every time. When we're using this particular app store, a lot of our companies, a lot of our organizations will publish certain starter applications on here with all their theming, their branding, and all of their security that's required for their organization. So we have connectors into data such as SAP connectors or Google Vision APIs, for instance, here. And we can see documents, screenshots, and so on. And we can download this into our application and add this as a new module. As we do so, it will pull all of the dependencies we need for our application. So once it's pulled into our application, we can use it as if it's a native connector within our platform. We can see we have a number of additional activities compared to the web modeler. So a richer set of functionality, such as calling out to any REST or SOAP service, calling out to Java Actions, but also any App Store components we download. So here we have two versions. We have a detect document text and a detect image text. So in this case, we want to pass it a photo, and we also want to pass it a key so that we can call that Google Vision API. And as we do so, we can then decide to set the return type on what we're going to return back from this service, and use that later in our microflow. So we want to use that string value we get back from our API, and we want to set that in our application. We want to change that match text to our detected text, and we want to commit and refresh that in the page. So now we've built that functionality, we want to be able to test that new functionality. So we want to run this locally in our browser. So we hit run locally, and this will now build our application on our own machine so that we can test it offline. We can test it on our own browser rather than deploying to a cloud server. And then we'll be able to see that running and test it locally on our Mendix mobile application. So we synchronize the application, which will create us all our tables. We can open up the Mendix mobile application and scan a QR code that's generated by the tool. And this allows us to open up the application on our mobile device and test the native device functionality. So here we scan the QR code, we open up the application, and we can go down into our particular accounts. We can view a particular transaction, and we can add a photo to this transaction. So if we take a photo of a receipt, for instance, we might want to take a photo of a train receipt. We can take a photo of that receipt now. We can then click and press the scan option. This will go back to our Google OCR service from the Google Vision. It will then respond back with some text, and then we've set that text on the page here, so we can see that information in our application. So very quickly, we've been able to build out an application using both the web modeler and the desktop environment, and combine both business and IT type of developers. So the idea of the Mendix platform is that we want to try and bring all those types of developers, all those types of users together in the platform. So we want to make those changes available to the rest of our developers. We want to make them available to our web modeler interface. So when we're developing in the desktop, and when we pull those changes from that merged, that branch line in the web modeler, it will actually lock the web modeler for us. So this ensures that the people that are using the web modeler will be using the latest version of the Mendix application. So once we merge those changes back in and we say finish sync with web modeler, we can tie back all of the user stories that we've been working on. So this is a really important feature of the platform because it allows the developers and the testers to know exactly what we've been working on in our platform. So we can communicate with our testers and our developers what we've been working on during the development process. So we're going to add in a comment here that we've been working on the Google Vision API, and we can commit those into our central team server repository, which is based on SVN, and it comes out of the box with the Mendix platform, allowing you to have multiple developers to work on the same project and work together on multiple different environments. So once we've committed this in, it will then unlock the web modeler, making all of those changes we've done in the desktop and the web modeler available to our developers in the web interface. So within an organization, different types of developers need to develop in different ways and use different tools. So now that those changes have been developed and they've been committed into a central repository, they will now be made available to our web users. So we can see the scan photo microflow, and we can see now that activity that we've developed and added in the desktop environment is available to our web users as well. We could also build our own connectors to our own enterprise systems and make those available in our web interface. So in summary, I've taken you through the Mendix platform and how our collaboration features really accelerate the development of applications so that we can combine different personas within an organization, from our UX experts, our operations, our integration specialists, and finally our business stakeholders. So all of these key personas are important to ensuring that application development is successful and that you build an application correctly first time right. Thank you for joining this Low Code in 30. We'll now take some questions from the audience.